Jai Hind, Saraswati Sisukunj Bhagwala Borsad, English Medium, Standard 8, Subject Science, and we are continuing with the chapter number 9, that is Reproduction in Animals. This is your video part 2. So what we have studied in first video, let's try to revise that. We have studied about the modes of reproduction. First one was sexual reproduction, in which we have studied about the male reproductive part, in which two testes, two sperm ducts and penis are part of male reproductive organ. We have studied about female reproductive organ, in which oviduct, ovary and uterus was present. Male reproductive part will form or produce sperm that are male gametes, and female gametes are also produced. When male and female gametes get produced, when they fuses into each other, right, they produce a young ones when it get developed. That was the first stage and we called it zygote. The process of fertilization is meeting of egg cell from the mother and a sperm cell from the father. So this is your fertilization process. Now fertilization that occurs inside the female body, that we call it internal fertilization. And today we will start with external fertilization. So let's see today's topic, that is external fertilization. You will be surprised to know that in many animals the fertilization take place outside the female body. Yes. Have you seen during the spring season or during the monsoon season, in slow moving water you will observe many eggs of frog. Now here the frog's eggs are not similar like the hen's eggs. Hen eggs has a special cover outside of the egg, but here in frog eggs there is no any cover like hen's egg. As the eggs are laid, male frog will deposit sperm on those eggs. Each sperm will move randomly inside the water with the help of tail. We have studied about the structure of the sperm, right, in which this tail is included. So with the help of tail, the sperm moves randomly. When the sperm comes in a contact with egg, so fertilization takes place. So that is known as external fertilization, because these eggs are not inside the mother's body, inside the female frog's body, right? So that is called external fertilization. Means the type of fertilization in which female gametes and male gametes fertilize or fuses outside the mother's body, right? That is your external fertilization. It is very common in aquatic animals like fishes, starfish, frogs, etc. If you'll observe this kind of small animals like frog and fishes, they lay hundreds of eggs. And why they are laying hundreds of eggs? If you'll observe the hen, right, the hen is only laying one egg. But about these small animals, they lay hundreds of eggs. So why it is like that? So look, they are so small, they are laying egg in the water, they release millions of sperms. Now these sperms come in a contact with the continuous flow of water, rainfall and the climate condition which is surrounding them. So it doesn't mean that every egg which is laid by female get fertilized. It is not like that. And many animals are living inside the water which feeds on this kind of small eggs, right? So to be ensured that from those hundreds of eggs, few will individually develop into a new young ones, to make sure for that, right? So this is in the nature, that hundreds, and then from that 100 only few will be a new young one of that particular animal. Now let's talk about the development of embryo. Now as we all know that after fertilization, the first step is zygote. Now that zygote will rapidly divide into the cells. Zygote will rapidly divide into the cells, means there will be cell formation inside the zygotes. Now the cell will make groups, and we all know group of cell, that is tissue, means from the zygote they will form cells. Cells will make different tissues. Right? Now these tissues will start to gather the formation of the body, in a small size, right? But it will start the formation of the body of that particular animal, and that is your embryo. That is your embryo. Means first stage is fertilization, zygote and the embryo. Embryo is, we can say, the initial body, a starting position of the development of the particular animal's body. That is your embryo. This embryo develop into the uterus of female. And this embryo will more develop into the different body parts like hand, legs, eyes, ears, mouth, like that, right? Skin and all. Now embryo's next stage is foetus. Now what is this foetus? When you are able to identify body organs like hands, legs and other body parts of that particular young one which is present in the uterus of female, right? When you are able to identify, we have many different technology nowadays, so we can identify it in the female body. So that is known as foetus. Now the body organs of embryo, that is new young ones, it develop in such a way that we can identify. That is called foetus. Now development of foetus is completed. Development of foetus, if it is completed, totally done, right? So at that time mother gives birth to young one. At that time mother give birth to young one. Now let's try to understand the development again. When fertilization take place, it means when female gametes and male gamete fuses into each other, right? They create zygote. That is the first initial stage, we can say. Now that zygote will start developing, means it will create cells. It will repeatedly create or break down into the cells. That cells will make group of the cells, that is tissue, means now it is creating tissues. Now that tissue structure, it is known as embryo. Now when embryo start development of itself inside the uterus, it will stick to the wall of uterus. That embryo will stick to the wall of uterus and it will start the development, right? It will develop into the different parts like eyes, hands, legs, like different parts it will develop. And when we are able to identify easily those parts, so that is known as foetus. That thing is known as foetus. When all parts of that baby animal is, we are able to identify easily, that is known as foetus. When this foetus is fully developed in the female body, the mother will give birth to the young one. But when we talk about hens, they do not, give birth to the young ones. They lay eggs. Now what happened in hens? What happened in hen's egg? Now, how baby get developed, how embryo get developed into the egg, that we are going to study. Soon after the fertilization, zygote divides rapidly to form cells and it travels down to the oviduct. Now many different layers are covering that zygote to protect it. The hard cell that you observe in the hen's leg, that is actually the protective layer. After the hard cell covered the embryo, right, the development of that hard cell is done, then hen will lay egg. The embryo will take at least 3 weeks to develop into the perfect chick. As we are talking about the hen, then it will develop into the chick within 3 weeks. And we already know that, in cartoons and in maybe you have observed live, that hens sit on the eggs to give a proper warmth to the eggs. But in egg, that is still embryo, that is not chick properly developed, means it is embryo only. Now when you talk about the humans, embryo development occurs inside the female body, but here in the hen, when we are talking, embryo development occurs outside the female's body, right? When the chick is completely developed, it will break the cell, it will crack the cell and comes out. The egg will hatch. And when you talk about frogs, so you have seen many tadpoles move inside the water during the monsoon season. So they also break the cell and they come out, but it is not hard as the hen's egg. So now here we talk about two things, the frog's eggs and the hen's egg. In both, development of the embryo occurs outside the body. Now here 2 words you are able to see, this is viviparous and that is oviparous. This viviparous animals and oviparous animals. Now what is this viviparous, oviparous? So look here, viviparous animals means animals that give birth to the young ones. Viviparous means animals that give birth to the young ones, right? They are not laying eggs. This viviparous do not lay eggs. And when we are talking about this one, that is oviparous animals, so this oviparous animals lay eggs. I mean, animals that lay eggs are known as oviparous animals, right? Now, how you will remember? So look here, when we are talking about oviparous, it starts with O. O means egg, right? O means egg. So easily we can remember, oviparous means animals that lay eggs. Start with O, right? And when there is no O in the beginning, means those animals give birth to the young ones, right? Now which kind of animals? We have many examples. If we talk about viviparous animals, so human being and tiger, lion, elephant, many. When we talk about oviparous animals, so small animals like fishes, frogs, right? And many birds are there, most of the birds, right? So that are oviparous animals. Now our next topic is young one to adults, right? Young one to adults. When we talk about human being, our basic body structure like 2 hands, 2 eyes, nose, mouth, 2 ears, hairs and other body parts remains as it is. It doesn't develop more, like we didn't get 3 hands, 4 legs. It doesn't like that. Yes, size increases and many other things occurs inside the body, right? But our basic structure remains same. But when we talk about other living organisms like silkworm, right, that whole structure changes when they start developing from young one to the adults, right? When the development process occurs in silkworm and many other that we are going to talk about, so they actually changes. Some get wings after being adult, right? So now let's talk about the frog for this example, development from young to the adult, right? It begins with egg, right? Here you can see it begins with egg. Now from the egg a early tadpole will comes out. The early tadpole will come out from the egg, right? It will develop into the late tadpole and that late tadpole will develop into the adult. This frog will lay egg in the adult stage, right? And again this process, egg, early tadpole, late tadpole, and again it becomes the adult frog. Now when you observe early tadpole, right, that early tadpole hands, structure of hand or leg we are not able to see. Only there is a small tail, right, with some structure of a face we are able to see. If you are observing the late tadpole, over there we can see some portion of hand or a leg like that, and a tail becomes long, right? And when we are observing these tadpoles, early and late tadpoles, we cannot imagine that afterward it will develop into the frog, adult frog. And when you will see the fully developed adult frog, the whole body structure is fully developed, face, hands and legs and everything is fully developed. If we talk about different small living things like that, in which young one and adult there is a lot of drastic change in the body structure, like silkworm, pupa or caterpillar, they are also going through this drastic change. You must have seen a beautiful moth come out from the cocoon, emerging out from the cocoon. In this case of a tadpole, the adult actually able to swimming and jumping, right? Adults from which come out from the cocoon, they are able to swimming and jumping. Now the transformation from larva to the adult, in between that there is a drastic change, and that drastic change is known as metamorphosis. That drastic change from larva to adult, right? The drastic change that occurs is known as metamorphosis. Up to now we were talking about the familiar animals like frog, hands and human beings, right? They are familiar, that we can see in our day-to-day life, and we were talking about them. Now what about those animals which are so micro, means which are so small, like hydra and amoeba? About amoeba we talked already in the previous chapter, 8th chapter, right? So what about those animals? As we discussed that all the small animal or any kind of big organism, they all reproduce. So what about this? How they reproduce? See, here you are able to see the figure of hydra. Now this hydra actually create a new bulges, right? Here you can see the first stage, bulges are just coming out from the hydra's body. Second and third stage. In the third stage, bulges is totally developed in individual hydra. Now the bulges that comes out from the hydra's body, we know it as birds. From this bird a new hydra will come out. Now let's talk about the amoeba. Let's talk about amoeba reproduction. Now here you have studied about amoeba and its structure, right? It has nucleus inside the center of its body. Now first stage, that is your amoeba. Now this is the second stage, when its nucleus get divided into individual nuclei. You are able to see here division of nuclei. Now body material also gets separate in both both parts of the nuclei. They are trying to divide the amount of material that they have, a body material. It is also get divided into two amoebas, and these two amoebas get separated. From that, one is a daughter amoeba and other is a parent amoeba. See here, the nucleus of amoeba get divided into two parts, and now they are individual amoebas. they are individual amoeba. Before it was only one. From that one it becomes two amoebas by dividing the nucleus, right? So this is how amoeba produce new young ones. Now this is something that you are surprised that only one parent is involved in this reproduction. Only one parent. In Hydra also you have seen that only one parent is involved. Now there is no male female like structure. In amoeba also there is no any female male like thing, right? Only one parent is involved. Now this type of reproduction in which only one parent is involved, this type of reproduction in which only one parent is involved is known as asexual reproduction. What is that? Asexual reproduction. So we can say that amoeba is under the asexual reproduction, right? So amoeba produce new young one in asexual reproduction. Now in Hydra, when we have seen it produce new bulges from the body, Hydra produce new bulges from the body. Now that is also asexual reproduction and it is called budding. What it's called? Budding, because it's create a bird like structure, and from that bird a new Hydra will take place, means new Hydra will born. So that is why it is known as budding. As we have studied in amoeba reproduction, right, that is asexual. Now look here, in asexual reproduction there are different types. First we have studied about the budding. Now a reproduction take place in amoeba, right? It divides itself into two. It divides its nucleus into two, right? So in a type of a reproduction in which animal reproduce by dividing itself into two separate or two individual living organisms. So that is known as binary fission. Binary fission. Fusion and fission, keep that in mind. When we were talking about humans, right, at that time male and female gametes fuse into each other. Here they are fission. Here the fission process occurs. Fission means it separates. It separates the organism, living organism, reproduce by separating, by dividing itself into two individual. That is binary fission, right? I hope you understand. Two methods of asexual reproduction. Two methods of asexual reproduction. First one was budding, second one was binary fission. So this was your whole chapter about reproduction in animals. I hope you understand all the topics that I discussed today. Now it's time to complete your workbook. I hope you have received that total worksheet. Soon we will discuss this chapter in live class. At that time you can ask me question if you have any about this binary reproduction or any other. Thank you so much.